Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first ever episode here with Rugby for Days. My name is Stefandre. I am the founder, and we have the co founder on the other side, Daniel. Quick introduction.
Yes, hi guys, and welcome to this new thing. We're excited to launch our new podcast. We're excited that you guys are listening in, and please share with your friends, and then we can talk about rugby. So I think this is a good thing.
Yes, I also think so. Let me just give you a bit of a backstory about Rugby for Days and how it all started. So Daniel and I would normally get together and talk about rugby, really dive into the stats and the figures and what's going on with rugby players. And at that stage, I was so fascinated about blogging and about just the online space, and I asked him, you know what, do you want to have a voice in this space? Do you want to talk about rugby? Do you want to expand your knowledge? And he said, of course, let's do it. He's a diehard Blue Bull supporter. I was a Blue Bull supporter. I'm a solid Stormer supporter for the last like decade, so don't hate me. And so that's how we started, and it's been I think 13 months now, roughly. Let's call it a year, and we're so excited. We're doing very well with just getting out to the community, talking about different ideas about rugby. And that is what we are going to do in this first episode. In this episode, we're gonna discuss what is happening with Super Rugby. Of course, it's in the coronavirus right now. There's no sport on at the moment. It's all postponed. But there is so many facets to think about of Super Rugby and how it can become better as just an overall competition. So Daniel, let me kick it off with you. What do you think about Super Rugby at the moment, and what do you think can change so we can just increase the sport or the competition's views and just overall reactions? What do you think?
So basically, for me, it was always the best when it was Super 12, Super 14, and then you played everybody. No conferences, no travels, no weird logs, no whatever they decided to do afterwards, like the Super 15 and with the 18 teams, and I don't know how many there was at a
Mm,
certain point, but there was never needed to go that far. I understand you want to develop rugby, but develop in the stations where you already have. Like bring Argentina in, lower the other teams, and just like what they did with the Cheetahs and with the Kings, put them in an overseas competition. Nobody cares because they can still watch their rugby. So the
yes.
most efficient tournament was the Super 12 and the Super 14, and they should go back to
Mm,
that. And you play each team once. If it's home or away, it doesn't matter. The top of the log goes
yes.
through the four. There's nothing like the third, fourth, and fifth and sixth play for place, and then play against one and two. No, you just play strong against strong. 1 to 4 goes through. They play for a final, semi-final, and final, and they should just go back to that because that was basic. Everybody could understand it. No playing against log one and log two and this division one, and there's too much moving parts. So just go back to old
Mm.
standard Super 12 or even Super 14, which was coming back anyway. So
Yes, yes, I agree with you there. I think where they went wrong in the last couple of years is they tried to overcomplicate the whole sport, which you literally just elaborated about the way that we do the conferences at the moment.
mm,
I get that people want to see who's the best in the conference. I get that, but it doesn't matter in the overall standings because you there's not a it's not like the NBA where there's a conference final, which there's two teams playing for a final spot, then only advancing. That's not what is happening here, and it even can't happen in Super Rugby because there's a third conference as well. You know,
mm,
in NBA and in America, there's
yeah,
only two conferences, so there will only be two teams advancing to the final. That would be a very interesting
mm,
concept if that ever evolved into something. But I agree with you. Go back to the standards. Just go back to the Super 14 format or Super 12 format. Get the best teams in. We want to see good teams playing against great teams. Most of all, we want to see the guys that's actually going to do the upset work. Some teams coming in and beating the Crusaders, for example, in New Zealand. That would be very interesting to see. But we don't want to go to spread thin. We don't want to spread the whole competition thin and just get everyone
mm,
involved. I know that's
yeah,
better for the adoption of rugby. but that is not the quality that we want to see.
Yeah.
And that's the
No, I
problem I see in Super Rugby at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because I mean, imagine playing 18 games Super Rugby or 17 to get to the final, and then you have to go play 5 test matches in the middle of the year, 5 at the end, depending if you're good enough to get
Mm,
selected, and then you have to play something like a Curry Cup or a ITM Cup, or you play about 50, 40 games in a year, which is just too much on the bodies. And I understand everybody wants to break a record and get to 150 tests or 100 tests, and but it just gets too much. Rather
mm,
lower the teams, make it the three strongest teams of Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. That gives you 4 nations, 3 teams each. That's 12 teams. And you use provincial tournaments like the Curry Cup or the ITM Cup in New Zealand
yes,
that you just make a promotional game. So let's say that the Crusaders, the Hurricanes, and the Highlanders are the top 3, just hypothetically. And then next year, or at the end of the year, the ITM Cup, the Blues qualify. They beat the Highlanders in the qualification. Now they're in the Super Rugby. And in South
yes,
Africa, the Cheetahs beat the Lions, and now they're in the no, Super Rugby. So everybody gets exposure, and you keep all your unions strong because everyone wants to compete for Super Rugby, but you don't
yes,
lose it because there's always a chance that all 3 teams can be replaced in the next year. So
yes. No, I agree. I agree that that would actually be a quite an interesting format to see. But just as we are going on this topic, I want to point out something that Matt Tamua said, and we spoke about this yesterday or the day before as well. Is that when he came back from, I think he played for Leicester, if I'm not mistaken, in England. He was of course he played for the Brumbies. He made his name there. He's of course a Wallaby star. He played last year very well in the Rugby World Cup for the Wallabies for Australia, and now he's currently playing for the Rebels. He made his comeback again in Super Rugby last year, and then of course this year there was only I think 6 or so weekends that there were games on
yeah.
before the whole COVID and what happened.
Hmm.
So he said in a quote, and I can actually get the quote here, but it doesn't even matter. He's just explaining in the last week or so that when Super Rugby is on, when Super Rugby is the competition to watch during the, let's say, first 3 or 4 months in the beginning of the year and so on to the mid parts of the year, that there's so many games that is being played in Cape Town and Johannesburg here in South Africa, where the New Zealand fans or even the Australian fans don't want to wake up 3 or 1 o'clock in the morning to watch the games.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very true statement that he is making. What do you think? What can Super Rugby do to change that, to get more fans into watching the game, supporting their teams that they need to go play away? For example, even if we go back to, let's say, the Super 12 structure, how can we combat the time differences? What do you think?
So obviously you'll never fix this problem officially in the southern hemisphere if you want to play against New Zealand or Australia being South Africa. Um, we being in the middle, we have the ideal time frame. But if it's such a crucial idea, just make the games earlier. I mean, 3 o'clock at Loftus is ideal time for everyone in Pretoria to go watch it on a Saturday evening or afternoon,
Mhm.
and it's actually an advantage to the Bulls because they practice that time at 3 in the afternoon, and it's very hot in Pretoria then, or we have a hotter climate then. Um, so it gets to your advantage then. If you put the hours, I think it's 7, so it's not, it's 10 o'clock at night then, or depending on the morning, that'll be a different issue. So you never bypass that system. So or you sacrifice 3 games and watch at 1 o'clock in the morning, or you just they just broadcast it later to you at the ideal time. You're gonna get spoiled at some time. There's never gonna be a crucial thing that says, yeah, now everybody has to play at 3 o'clock, because when it's 3 o'clock in Australia, we minus 7 hours. When they're playing there, so it's never gonna work out for someone. Someone is gonna get denied, and someone's gonna have to have a negative side to this. So I think just suck it up, make the travel less, make it one tour. You play, or make it, if it's Super 12, there's 11 games you play. So 6 home games, five away, and then for one unlucky team, they have 6 away games, and then 5 at home. But next year they get a chance. So just compromise.
Yes, I think that's a real problem that Super Rugby needs to address in the next year or so before we start Super Rugby again. At the moment, it's postponed indefinitely. Some experts say we might see something in July, but just out of a personal point of view, I don't think we're going to see Super Rugby in this
I
year.
agree.
And if we return to it next year, there needs to be a shake up of the current way that we do, or how we view this competition. There needs to be a different way to get people excited again watching rugby. And I think there's many that are longing for rugby at the moment. Like I'm definitely, I want to watch some rugby at this stage where we're in. But I think that is something that they need to address, and there is definitely solutions that they can look towards. But I hope that there will be voices of influence
Hmm.
speaking
Yes.
about this topic, and hopefully getting it in front of the right people. So that's roughly for this what we have for this episode. If you liked what we are talking about here, and you are a rugby fan, a die-hard rugby supporter, please consider subscribing to this podcast channel. We do have a YouTube channel as well. And of course, our rugby4days.com is our primary blog, where we blog about rugby ideas, referees, opinions, and so on. We are very controversial in the things that we say. We like to do a couple of combinations as well, and just speak out about the bizarre institutional picking of players. So that is what we do. Daniel, I'll give you the last words. Go for it.
Yes, thank you very much from our side that you have listened to this podcast. And if you're following our content, we have a blog post up, we have a YouTube channel up, so you can go check that out, give it some love, leave a like, leave a comment. We love to interact with the community and hear your opinion. And as Stefano said, we like to be controversial, but it's not that we hate certain players or certain teams. It's just sometimes people do stupid stuff, and we know that's people, and we just let them know about it. So it's nothing personal,
Yes.
but yes, we all in the spirit of rugby, and yeah, that's from our side.
Awesome. Thanks so much for listening, and then we'll catch you in the next episode.
Cheers, guys.